They said the Eagles front office had finally met their match. That this was going to be the summer where the drama never stopped. Where the chaos consumed everything. Where one of the most talented rosters in the entire NFL got swallowed alive by soap opera nonsense before a single padded practice ever took place. And then, in the span of 48 hours, Howie Roseman flipped the entire script on everybody. Welcome back. And if you are new here, buckle up, because what just happened in Philadelphia is one of the most stunning, most calculated, most jaw-dropping ways to open a training camp that this franchise, or honestly any franchise, has pulled off in years. We are talking about a $152 million bombshell. We are talking about a 6'9" monster rookie who is already making a veteran sweat for his job before the first padded practice. We are talking about an Eagles roster that, right now, today, might be the most dangerous football team assembling for the 2026 NFL season. And we are going to break down every single piece of it. But first, let's go back. Let's go back to where this story really starts. Because you can't understand what just happened unless you understand how close this whole thing came to going completely sideways. Chapter 1. The Powder Keg. Rewind the clock a few months. The Philadelphia Eagles just came off a season where they looked like world beaters for 3/4 of a year, and then the injury bug hit harder than a Chris Jones bull rush. Their star defensive tackle, Jalen Carter, goes down. Their all-pro right tackle, Lane Johnson, goes down. The wheels wobbled. The playoffs came and went faster than anyone wanted. But here's the thing, everyone in Philadelphia knew something. Everyone who followed this team closely understood one fundamental truth heading into the summer. The Eagles had a ticking time bomb on their hands. And his name was Jalen Carter. Now, before we go any further, let's be real about who Jalen Carter is, because some of you watching this might not know the full picture. And you need to, because this story doesn't make sense without it. Jalen Carter is 25 years old. 25. He is a two-time Pro Bowl defensive tackle. He came out of Georgia, National Championship Georgia, as arguably the most physically gifted defensive lineman to enter the NFL draft in a generation. When scouts talked about him, they ran out of adjectives. When offensive linemen practiced against him, they went home with nightmares. This man is a freak of nature. Elite quickness. Elite strength. Elite everything, when he is healthy and when he is locked in. The problem? Last season, he wasn't either of those things for very long. He played just 11 games. 11. Shoulder injuries that had been nagging him since the Super Bowl run finally caught up to him. And if that wasn't complicated enough, there was the little matter of Week 1 against the Dallas Cowboys, where Carter got himself ejected for spitting in Dak Prescott's face. Yes, you heard that right. A moment that the entire NFL watched. A moment that made every Eagles fan cover their face. A moment that gave the organization every reason to pump the brakes on paying this man top dollar. Because here's what the Eagles value more than almost anything else. More than talent. More than highlight reel plays. They value consistency. They value professionalism. They value the guys who show up every single week and handle their business. And when your star player gets himself thrown out of the season opener for spitting on the opposing quarterback, that's a problem. So heading into this offseason, everyone was watching. Would Carter get his money? Would the Eagles pay top dollar for a player who had disciplinary questions, shoulder questions, and consistency questions all swirling around him at the same time? The answer should have been simple. Guys at Carter's level of talent always get paid. Always. But the Eagles are not a normal organization. Chapter 2. The Standoff. Spring arrives. OTAs begin. And Jalen Carter is not there. Now, there are two ways to read that. Either Carter is protecting himself while contract talks are ongoing, smart business move, totally understandable. Or, he's sending a message. He's turning up the heat. He's letting Howie Roseman know that if the money doesn't come, the summer is going to get very, very uncomfortable. Reports started trickling out. The Eagles and Carter had been talking. But nothing was done. The numbers weren't matching up. Carter and his representation, the legendary Drew and Jason Rosenhaus, were looking at what Jeffrey Simmons just got from the Tennessee Titans. 3 years, $105.8 million. An average of $35.27 million per year. And they wanted to reset the market entirely. Meanwhile, the Eagles, who had already given Jordan Davis a massive extension, who were staring down their own salary cap realities, were being careful. They wanted to see more consistency. They wanted assurances. They wanted to know that the player they were about to lock up for the next 5 years was going to show up every week and be the monster they knew he could be. And here's where it got genuinely tense. Mandatory minicamp came. Carter didn't participate. There were whispers that an injury may have played a role, but the optics were not great. The questions were starting to pile up. Was this going to turn into a full-blown holdout? Was the Eagles training camp going to open with their most important defender sitting in a different zip code? Because let me paint that picture for you. The Eagles were already dealing with a new offensive coordinator. Brand new scheme. Jalen Hurts learning a fresh system. Lane Johnson coming back from a significant foot injury. There were storylines everywhere, and the absolute last thing this organization needed was Jalen Carter making training camp a circus. One insider report at the time framed it perfectly. It noted that after an offseason already dominated by A.J. Brown contract drama that the Eagles ultimately resolved, the last thing Philadelphia wanted was another high-profile holdout turning camp into a sequel nobody asked for. And that's exactly the pressure Howie Roseman was operating under. He had a decision to make. And everyone was watching. Chapter 3. Roseman slams the door. Training camp reporting date. July 28, 2026. Eagles players roll into the Jefferson Health Training Complex in South Philadelphia. Cameras are clicking. Media is set up. Everyone is waiting for the storyline to play out. And then, the Eagles announce it. Done. Deal. Signed. Jalen Carter. 4-year extension. $152 million. Up to $160 million with incentives. $106 million guaranteed. Let that land for a second. $152 million. The deal keeps Carter in Philadelphia through 2031. And the annual value? $38 million per year. That number matters. Because that number is not just a big contract. That number is the biggest average annual salary ever paid to a defensive tackle in the history of the National Football League. Ever. Jeffrey Simmons? $35.27 million per year. That was the previous high. Chris Jones before that at $31.25 million. Carter just leapfrogged every single one of them. The Rosenhaus brothers, Drew and Jason, they came to town and they reset the market. That's exactly what they promised they'd do. And Howie Roseman, to his credit, gave them what they needed to get it done. Think about what just happened here. One day before the first real training camp practice, maybe the most important single day in terms of team chemistry and camp momentum, Roseman eliminates the biggest potential distraction on the entire roster in one move. No holdout. No drama. No press conferences with Carter looking unhappy. No daily beat reporters asking Hurts about his defensive teammates' contract situation. None of it. Just a pen on paper. A press release. And 250 pounds of the most talented defensive tackle on the planet walking into camp with a smile on his face and $100 million in his pocket. This is what separates the Philadelphia Eagles from ordinary organizations. This is what Howie Roseman does. He identifies the problem before it explodes. He reads the room. He understands that winning football is about environment as much as talent, and he protects that environment at all costs. But here's what I really want you to think about. Because the contract story is massive. But it's not the whole story. There are real, legitimate questions surrounding this deal. And if you are an Eagles fan, you need to sit with these for a minute. Chapter 4. The questions nobody wants to ask. $106 million guaranteed to a player who missed 5 games with shoulder injuries last year. A player who had surgical procedures on both shoulders. A player who got himself ejected in week 1 of the previous season. Now look, I am not here to pile on Jalen Carter. The man is a generational talent. When he is right, when he is fully healthy and dialed in, there is not a more dominant interior defensive lineman in football. Full stop. But Bleeding Green Nation, one of the most respected Eagles outlets around, pointed something out that stuck with me. They noted that this extension didn't feel like the Eagles' typical approach of getting way out ahead of the market. The Eagles, under Roseman, usually make their deals before the market forces their hand. Before the price goes up. Before leverage shifts. This one felt different. It felt like they waited longer than usual. And nobody's entirely sure why. Was it the medical reports on those shoulders? Was it the Dak Prescott spitting incident and the character question it raised? Was it the inconsistency Carter showed across the season even before the injuries hit? Or, and this is the most generous reading, was it simply that the market hadn't been set yet, and the Eagles were waiting for the right data point before they could have the right conversation? We may never know the full answer. But here's what we do know. The Eagles made a bet. A massive, record-setting, franchise-defining bet. They looked at Jalen Carter, the shoulder surgeries and all, the Week 1 ejection and all, the 11 games played and all, and they said, this man is worth $152 million to our football team. And honestly, based on what he looks like when he's healthy, they might be completely right. When Carter is on the field and fully engaged, he changes games. He changes offensive game plans. Coordinators lose sleep over him. He demands double teams that free up the rest of that defensive line. Jordan Davis, Moro Ojomo, Byron Young, all of whom become more dangerous because Carter is eating up blocks on the other side. Now lock that group together through 2031, alongside Jordan Davis, who already signed his own extension earlier this offseason. Philadelphia might have the most terrifying defensive interior in the NFL for the next half-decade. But, and this is a big but, Carter has to show up. He has to be healthy. He has to keep his emotions in check. He has to be the player that contract says he is every single Sunday, not just when he feels like it. The Eagles made a bet. Now the pressure is on Carter to pay it off. Chapter 5. And then there's this giant rookie. All right. We've talked about Jalen Carter. We've talked about $152 million. We've talked about Howie Roseman being a genius, or at least a very strategic gambler. Now let's talk about the other story. The one that's a little quieter. The one that doesn't have a $100 million announcement attached to it. But the one that could genuinely change the composition of this Eagles roster in ways people are not fully prepared for. Let me set the scene. Lane Johnson. The right tackle. 14 years in the NFL. 2 Super Bowl rings. Future Hall of Famer. One of the greatest offensive tackles this league has ever produced. He's coming back from a significant Lisfranc foot injury that cost him the last 8 games of the season, including the playoffs. Last year, when he was hurt, this offensive line was noticeably different. Not bad, they had Fred Johnson stepping in, but noticeably different. Noticeably less dominant. And everyone who pays attention to this team has known, for the last year or two, that the clock is ticking. Lane Johnson is not going to play forever. He's one of the great ones. But he's in his mid-30s. He's had significant injuries in back-to-back seasons. The Eagles needed a plan. Not eventually. So in the 2026 NFL Draft, when the Eagles were on the clock in the 3rd round, the 68th overall pick, they made their move. Markel Bell. Offensive tackle. University of Miami. And here's the first thing you need to know about Markel Bell. The first thing that makes people stop and stare. He is 6 feet and 9 inches tall. And he weighs 346 pounds. Let me put that in perspective for you. That is enormous. That is a human being who, if you stood him next to most offensive linemen in the NFL, would make them feel small. 6'9", 346. That's not a football player. That's a skyscraper with cleats on. He played at Miami, the University of Miami, where he started all 16 games as a senior and helped form one of the best defensive lines in the ACC. And what makes his tape special, beyond the obvious size, is his footwork. His athleticism. His ability to move his enormous frame laterally with speed that doesn't match his dimensions. The guy played basketball in high school. And when you watch him move, when you see him redirect, change angles, absorb pass rushers, you can see it. There's a fluidity to how he plays that just doesn't usually come in a 6'9", 346-pound package. Now, Bell played left tackle in college. All of his starting experience, all of his tape, all of his development, it came on the left side. Moving to right tackle for the NFL is not nothing. It's a different footwork pattern, different techniques, different visual recognition responsibilities. Some guys struggle to make that transition even after years of professional experience. But the Eagles didn't wait to see how Bell handled it. They threw him into the fire immediately. Chapter 6. Stepping into the spotlight. OTAs. Voluntary spring workouts. Lane Johnson, because he is a veteran and he has earned every right in the world to do this, skips the voluntary sessions. He's done it before. Nobody blinks. Except this time, something different happens. Instead of sliding Fred Johnson, the veteran backup, the experienced swing tackle, into those first-team reps at right tackle, the Eagles make a choice. They put Markel Bell out there. A rookie. Third-round pick. Brand new to the organization. A player who has never taken a professional practice snap. They put him with the first team. And you know what? He held his own. Reporters who were there for the media open sessions noted that Bell moved well. That for a guy his size, transitioning between tackle positions, playing without pads in a spring practice setting, he looked comfortable. He looked like someone who belonged. He didn't look lost. He didn't look overwhelmed. He looked like a football player at a football practice. And the detail that really made people raise an eyebrow. When Lane Johnson did show up for mandatory minicamp, the Eagles didn't slot Bell back to the second team and forget about him. They kept Bell working. They put him at left tackle with the second team offense. They are cross-training this rookie on both sides of the offensive line. That is a statement. That is the Eagles telling everyone watching, and they are definitely sending a message here, that Markel Bell is not a developmental project who sits on the bench for 2 years and learns. They want him ready. They want him available. They want him capable of stepping in at either tackle position if the situation demands it. And the situation last year demanded it in the worst possible way. When Lane Johnson went down with that foot injury, the Eagles felt it. They survived. They still made the playoffs. But they felt it. Never again. That's the mentality Roseman operates with. Now let's talk about the numbers Bell put up in college, because they are legitimately impressive and they deserve to be spoken aloud. In 2025, in 440 total pass blocking snaps at Miami, Bell allowed just 9 pressures. 9. 1 quarterback hit. 0 sacks. 0. In the ACC, against some legitimate pass rushing talent, he gave up 0 sacks across hundreds of snap attempts. His quarterback never hit the ground because of a failure on his end. Now, the NFL is a different world. The speed is different. The power is different. The chess match is different. Nobody is saying this rookie is ready to be a starter right now. But those are not the numbers of a player who needs years of babying before he can contribute. Those are the numbers of someone who already knows how to protect a quarterback. And the Eagles know it. That's why Fred Johnson, the veteran who was the answer last year when Lane went down, suddenly finds himself in a real competition. Not a token competition. Not a formality. A genuine battle. Chapter 7. Fred Johnson's Problem. Let's talk about Fred Johnson for a second. Because this is a guy who deserves credit. Fred Johnson stepped into a brutal situation last year when Lane Johnson got hurt and he handled it. He played. He protected Jalen Hurts. He was a professional. He's a veteran presence on this offensive line who understands the system, understands the expectations, understands what it takes to play for the Eagles. The Eagles brought him back this offseason. They signed him in free agency specifically because they know how critical the swing tackle position is. You cannot have a great offensive line and then have nothing behind it. When starters go down, and in the NFL, starters always go down eventually, you need something real behind them. So they brought Fred Johnson back. Solid move. Reasonable deal. Experienced guy in a critical role. And then they used a third-round pick on Markel Bell and immediately started giving Bell first-team reps. If you're Fred Johnson, what does that feel like? You come back. You sign your deal. You show up ready to work. And in walks this 6'9" rookie mountain of a human being who immediately gets handed the reps that you expected to compete for. That's the nature of the NFL. That's the business. But it's also a real competition, and right now, based on everything coming out of camp, Bell is in a genuine battle for that number 3 tackle role. The role of first man up when Lane Johnson or Jordan Mailata needs a breather or goes down. Multiple reports heading into camp have confirmed that this is a real position battle. The Inquirer, NBC Sports Philadelphia, Sports Illustrated's Eagles coverage. They all flagged the Bell vs. Fred Johnson competition as one of the genuinely meaningful battles of training camp. And here's the thing about why it matters so much beyond just backup depth. The Eagles' identity, their whole thing, is built on the offensive line. It has been since Howie Roseman took over and built this culture. The best offensive line in football protects Jalen Hurts, protects the scheme, gives the skill players time to operate. It is the foundation of everything they do on that side of the ball. When that foundation cracks, even briefly, the whole operation gets shaky. Markel Bell is the Eagles' investment in making sure the foundation never cracks again. And training camp is where they start finding out if that investment is going to pay off sooner than anyone expected. Chapter 8. The bigger picture, what this roster actually is. Alright, let's zoom out for a minute. Because we've been talking about individual moves, individual players, individual storylines. But I want you to see what the full picture looks like when you step back and look at this Eagles team heading into 2026. Offensively, Jalen Hurts is healthy. Coming into a new offensive scheme under coordinator Sean Mannion, a scheme that both Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata have publicly praised. Mailata called Mannion an evil genius, and said that's meant in the best possible way. Johnson noted that his job might actually be a little easier in the new system. When your Hall of Fame caliber right tackle says the new offensive coordinator is making his job easier, that's a good sign. Devonta Smith is your WR1. Dallas Goedert is your tight end. You've got a loaded backfield. And behind Smith, there's a fascinating competition developing. Makai Lemon, a first-round rookie who missed spring with a hamstring injury but appears ready for camp, will be competing with Dontavian Wicks and Hollywood Brown for targets and playing time. That's a battle worth watching closely because the Eagles need someone to emerge as a genuine number 2 threat. The offensive line, as we've discussed, has all 5 starters back. All 5. Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, Tyler Steen, Cam Jurgens. And now with Markel Bell pushing the depth in a real way, this unit might be as well positioned as it's ever been, even including the Kelsey era. Defensively, where do we begin? Jalen Carter, just signed to the biggest deal in defensive tackle history. Jordan Davis, extended earlier this offseason. Moro Ojomo coming into his own. Byron Young. UAR Bernard. The Eagles' interior is legitimately terrifying. On the edge, Jonathan Greenwood was added to be the top pass rusher. And behind him, a fascinating two-man race between Nolan Smith and Jalix Hunt for the other starting edge spot. Both are young. Both are explosive. Both want to start. That battle is going to be one of the most electric things happening at training camp every single day. And in the secondary, Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean at corner. Those are 2 of the most promising young defensive backs in the entire league. Add Rick Woolen and Jonathan Jones behind them. That's depth that most teams don't have as their starters. The safety position is the one question mark. Andrew Mukuba and Marcus Epps are competing for those starting spots, and it sounds like Roseman might not be done shopping there. He's done it before, revamped safety mid-camp in 2022. Don't be shocked if he does it again. But here's the big question. Here's what everyone is building toward. Here's the thing that makes all of this matter. Can this team, with all of this talent, all of this depth, all of this firepower, actually win the Super Bowl? Chapter 9. The real stakes. Let's talk about it honestly. The Eagles have been one of the elite teams in the NFC for the last 3 years. They've been to the Super Bowl. They've been close. They've had the talent. They've had the wins. And yet, the championship still sits just out of reach. Last year, injuries derailed them. Carter missed games. Lane Johnson missed games. Hurts stayed healthy, but the pieces around him kept getting pulled away one by one. This year, they've addressed it. They've locked up Carter long-term. They've invested in the Bell developmental plan. Lane Johnson is reportedly fully healthy coming out of that foot surgery. Media reports from minicamp described him as fully recovered and ready to roll. The new offensive scheme, the one Mannion is bringing in, is supposed to take some pressure off Hurts. To give him cleaner reads. To use the talent around him more efficiently. If that's true, if Hurts gets into a rhythm in a system that's tailored to his strengths, this offense could be terrifyingly good. And the defense. If Carter plays 16 games, 16 healthy, locked-in, monster games, this defense is top 3 in the NFL. Maybe top 2. Maybe the best. That's not hyperbole. That's the math. Carter and Davis are the best defensive tackle duo in football. Greenwood on the edge with Smith and Hunt rotating behind him. Mitchell and DeJean at corner. This is an elite defense waiting to happen. The Eagles know what's at stake. That's why Roseman made the Carter deal before camp even started. He wasn't going to let this season get contaminated by drama before it began. He's been here before. He knows how fast a great team can fall apart if the environment turns toxic. Eliminate the drama. Protect the culture. Let the football players play football. That's the plan. And right now, on day 1 of training camp, it's working. Chapter 10. The Markel Bell storyline you need to keep watching. Okay, we need to come back to Bell one more time. Because there is a thread here that has not been fully pulled yet. Think about the long game. Lane Johnson is 35. 35 years old. He's a 2-time Super Bowl champion. He's a lock for the Hall of Fame when he hangs it up. He came back from a Liz Frank injury, one of the toughest foot injuries you can have, and by all reports he's looked great in camp. But how many more years does he have? 1, 2, 3 on the outside. The Eagles drafted Markel Bell with exactly that timeline in mind. They are not expecting Bell to replace Lane Johnson in 2026. But they are expecting Bell to be ready when the moment comes. And they are, as we have already discussed, giving him every opportunity to accelerate that timeline. Here's the detail that really gets me thinking. The Eagles were expected, widely expected in draft media, to take an offensive lineman in the first or second round. That's how important the position is to this organization. When those picks came and went without a tackle, people were confused. Then they took Bell at 68. And everything made sense. They got the guy they wanted. They just got him at a price that left their first 2 picks available for other needs. That's Howie Roseman being Howie Roseman, getting maximum value, being patient, not panicking just because the crowd expects a move. And now Bell is here. He is 6'9". He is 346. He is working on both sides of the offensive line simultaneously. He allowed 0 sacks across 440 college pass-blocking attempts. If this man develops even close to his ceiling, if the athleticism and the size and the intelligence all combine the way they look like they could, the Eagles don't just have a Lane Johnson replacement. They have a cornerstone. They have the anchor of a great offensive line for the next decade. That's what the Bell story is really about. Not just camp competition. Not just who's the number 3 tackle in 2026. It's about the identity of this franchise 5 years from now. And it starts here. It starts in this training camp. It starts with how Bell handles the learning curve, handles the coaching, handles the physical demands of playing a new position against veteran competition every single day in practice. Eagles fans should be excited about this. Because the early returns, the spring reports, the mini-camp glimpses, all suggest there is something real here. Something beyond just big rookie with upside. There is real polish. Real football IQ. Real adaptability. Watch Markel Bell this summer. Remember this moment. Because you might be watching the future of the Eagles' offensive line take its first real steps. Chapter 11. The safety question and what Roseman might do next. We would be doing you a disservice if we didn't hit on the one area where the Eagles look genuinely incomplete right now. Safety. Andrew Mukuba has one of the starting spots locked up, from all indications. He's young, he's athletic, and the Eagles believe in him. But next to him, Marcus Epps is currently the frontrunner, but reports indicate the Eagles are not exactly convinced about their depth at the position. Epps has been a solid, reliable player. Not elite. Not a game changer. Solid. And for a team that has locked up Carter, signed Greenwood, extended Davis, drafted Bell, solid is not really their standard. Here is where history becomes a really useful guide. In 2022, Howie Roseman made a trade during training camp to address the safety position. He looked at what he had, decided it wasn't enough, and went and got better. He did it in the middle of summer. He can do it again. He has done it before. He has the history and the willingness to make moves that other front offices would consider too disruptive. So here is the thing to watch as training camp unfolds. If Mukuba and Epps practice together and the film tells Roseman they don't have what they need back there, don't be surprised if the Eagles make noise. Don't be surprised if a name surfaces that nobody saw coming. Roseman doesn't let weaknesses linger. He addresses them. He's been doing it his entire time in Philadelphia, and his record speaks for itself. The safety situation is the one genuine vulnerability on this roster right now. Everything else has been addressed. But if the Eagles head into the regular season without upgrading that second safety spot, it could be a potential soft spot in an otherwise dominant defense. Stay tuned. The summer is young. Chapter 12. The Quarterback Conversation. Let's talk about Jalen Hurts. Because you cannot talk about the Eagles without talking about their franchise quarterback. Hurts enters 2026 healthy. Fully healthy, as far as we know. He has survived everything this franchise has thrown at him. The doubters, the media noise, the injury scares, the offensive coordinator changes. Now he gets a new one. Sean Mannion is the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia this season, and the early reports from everyone who has been around these practices are genuinely interesting. Both Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata, two of the smartest, most experienced players on this roster, have spoken positively about what Mannion is installing. Johnson said his job might be easier in the new scheme. Mailata called the guy an evil genius. When your offensive linemen are that enthusiastic about the person drawing up the plays, it usually means good things for your quarterback. Hurts has always been at his best when he has a clean system. When the reads are clear. When the design puts him in positions to make quick, decisive throws rather than asking him to solve complex problems behind pressure. If Mannion gives him that, and all signs point to yes, then Jalen Hurts in 2026 could be the best version of Jalen Hurts we have ever seen. And here's another thing to watch. The QB2 situation. Tanner McKee and veteran Andy Dalton are competing for the backup role. McKee is in the final year of his contract. Dalton was brought in specifically because the Eagles wanted experienced competition at that spot. It's an interesting dynamic. McKee is the young guy trying to prove he's the answer long-term. Dalton is the veteran who's been here before and knows exactly what this role requires. It won't make or break the Eagles' season. But it's a window into how Roseman builds roster depth. Nothing is handed out. Every spot is earned. Every player has to compete. Even the backup quarterback. Chapter 13. Edge Rush and the Battle for the Other Starting Spot. The Eagles added Jonathan Greenard as their premier edge rusher this offseason. He's the guy. He's the top of the depth chart on the outside. That's settled. But next to him, that's where it gets really, genuinely interesting. Nolan Smith Jr. Jalen Hunt. Two young, explosive, talented edge rushers who have both been developing inside this defensive system. Both have shown flashes. Both have moments on film where you watch and think, okay, this guy can be special. The issue? Neither of them has truly seized the moment yet. Neither has had the sustained, dominant stretch over a full season that would make the decision obvious. So they fight for it. Right here. Right now. In training camp. And there's an important wrinkle here. Reports indicate the Eagles plan to have Jalen Hunt transition to the left side of the defensive line, because Greenard plays the right. Hunt, whose best football has come on the right side, is now being asked to adapt. This is a real developmental challenge. Hunt's pass rush moves, the timing, the angles, the leverage, have been calibrated for one side of the line. Flipping to the other is not trivial. It's a challenge that will define whether Hunt takes the next step. And it's a challenge that gives Nolan Smith a real opportunity to show up, outperform, and take what he believes is his. Watch this battle. It's going to be the most physically explosive competition in camp. Every single rep between those two and the first-team offensive lineman is going to be appointment viewing. Chapter 14. Wide Receiver. Who emerges behind Smith? Devonta Smith. WR1. Locked in. Not a question. But Devonta Smith cannot be everywhere. This offense needs playmakers behind him. It needs a number 2 receiver who can stretch the field, who can make plays in traffic, who can help take some of the coverage burden off Smith's shoulders. Last season, the Eagles were one of the more one-dimensional passing offenses in terms of where targets went. Smith was the clear focal point. When he was open, Hurts found him. When he wasn't, The Eagles sometimes struggled to find consistent secondary options. That has to change. And this summer is where the answer starts to form. The three players fighting for meaningful receiving roles are Mekhi Lemon, Dontavian Wicks, and Hollywood Brown. Lemon is the first-round rookie. He comes in with the highest draft capital. He comes in with the most hype. But he missed spring workouts with a hamstring injury, which is always a little worrying for a speed receiver, because hamstrings and speed receivers are a volatile combination, and now he's got to make up lost ground in camp while simultaneously learning a brand new NFL offense from scratch. The pressure on Lemon is real. First-round picks are expected to contribute immediately. The Eagles used significant draft capital on him. And right now, he's behind on the learning curve. Hollywood Brown is the veteran option. He's been around. He knows how to navigate an NFL offense. He brings experience and reliability, though he's also had injury issues of his own throughout his career. And Wicks, Dontavian Wicks, is quietly the one I'd keep an eye on. He's a guy who has shown real ability to win routes against NFL-caliber corners. He might be the dark horse of this competition. Whoever wins meaningful roles in this receiver group is going to matter enormously to how this offense functions. Give Hurts another real weapon. Give him someone who can be genuinely dangerous when defenses load up on Smith, and this offense becomes very, very hard to stop. That's the mission this training camp. Watch the wide receiver room closely. Chapter 15. What Jalen Carter needs to prove. We have talked about the contract. We have celebrated the extension. We have marveled at the numbers. But let's be direct. Because fans deserve honesty, not just hype. Jalen Carter has to prove something this year. Not to the Eagles front office. They clearly believe in him enough to hand him the most lucrative contract in defensive tackle history. But to himself. To the league. To anyone watching who is still carrying the questions from last season. He's 25 years old. He has 2 Pro Bowls. He has elite physical ability. But he also has the spitting incident. He has the missed games. He has the shoulder surgeries that the Eagles clearly navigated carefully in their negotiations. The $38 million per year player, the highest paid interior defensive lineman in NFL history, has to show up every Sunday and play like that number makes sense. Has to be dominant when healthy. Has to manage his emotions when the game gets heated. Has to be a leader in that locker room, not a question mark. The Eagles have surrounded him with the right pieces. Jordan Davis, one of the most physically imposing run-stuffers in football, will be next to him. The edge rushers around them will create chaos. The corners and safeties behind will eliminate mistakes. But Carter is the engine of this defense. When he plays well, when he is healthy, engaged, and locked in, this Philadelphia defense is elite. When he is not, the ripple effects go everywhere. The pressure of that contract is real. And the best version of Jalen Carter, the 2-time Pro Bowl version, the guy opposing offenses scheme their entire game plan around, has to show up this training camp and not let up. Because here's the thing about Howie Roseman's record of big bets. He wins them. He bet on Jordan Mailata, a rugby player from Australia who had never played football. He won. He bet on Jalen Hurts when half the fanbase wanted someone else. He won. He bet on building through the offensive line when it wasn't fashionable. He won. Now he's betting $152 million on Jalen Carter. The question isn't whether Roseman made a smart bet. His track record says he did. The question is whether Carter is ready to be worth it. Training camp starts now. The answer starts here. Chapter 16. The culture of competition. Here's something that doesn't get talked about enough when people discuss what makes the Eagles different. It's the culture of competition they have built over the last decade plus under Roseman. There is not a single spot on this roster that you get to sleepwalk into. The starting offensive line? Earned every year in practice. The defensive positions? Competed for, pushed, challenged every day in camp. The backup spots? Fought for with genuine intensity. Lane Johnson, who is a Hall of Famer in waiting, who has 2 Super Bowl rings, who has been one of the best tackles in football for 12 years, came back from a Liz Frank injury and watched a rookie 3rd-round pick get his first team reps during OTAs. That's the culture. That's the message. Nobody gets to coast. Nobody gets to assume. Everyone competes. And the interesting result of that culture, it makes the team better. It raises the level of every single practice. It makes the starters sharper because they know that every day they walk out there, someone behind them is trying to take their job. Bell working against the starting defensive line. Carter working against the starting offensive line. Smith and Hunt and Greenwood going at each other in pass rush drills. Lemon, Wicks, and Brown competing for route running reps. Every practice is a competition. Every rep matters. That's what training camp means for an organization like this. It's not preseason warm-up. It's not team bonding. It's the foundation being built. The depth being tested. The replacements being prepared. And this summer, with the Carter extension eliminating one massive distraction, with Bell bringing genuine energy and excitement to the offensive line competition, with a new offensive system generating real enthusiasm from veteran players, the environment in South Philadelphia right now feels electric. Chapter 17. Super Bowl or Bust. Let's talk about expectations. Real expectations. The Philadelphia Eagles have been a top-tier team for the last 3 seasons. They've had the roster. They've had the quarterback. They've had the coaching. And they haven't won it all since the magical Nick Foles Super Bowl run, which, honestly, feels like it was from another era entirely. This roster, right now, today, might be the best Eagles roster since that Super Bowl team. Maybe better in some areas. They have depth that team didn't have. They have more young talent developing behind the starters. They have a coach in Nick Sirianni who has earned his credibility through consistently competing at the highest level. But expectations have a weight to them. And in Philadelphia, that weight is different than anywhere else. Eagles fans don't want to hear about training camp predictions. They don't want to hear about potential. They don't want to hear about what this team could become. They want results. They want wins. They want February. And honestly, based on everything we have covered today, the Carter extension, the Bell development, the offensive line health, the new scheme, the defensive depth, the Eagles have the pieces to chase that February dream in a very real way. What stands between them and a Super Bowl? Health. The Eagles' Achilles heel for the last 2 seasons has been injuries hitting at the worst possible times. They need Carter to play 16 games. They need Lane Johnson to hold up through the playoffs. They need Hurts to stay clean in the pocket. They need the pieces to stay connected. And they need the new things, the Mannion scheme, the Bell integration, the safety position, to work. If health holds and the new additions click, this team can compete with anyone. The San Francisco 49ers. The Kansas City Chiefs. The Detroit Lions. Anyone. If injuries bite again, well, that's football. And that's a conversation for a different summer. But right now, day 1 of training camp, the Carter deal fresh on the books, Bell making noise in the tackle competition, the defense stacked from end to end. Right now, the Philadelphia Eagles feel like a team on a mission. Chapter 18. The bottom line. Let me bring this home for you. The Eagles just had one of the most meaningful 48-hour stretches any NFL team can have before their first padded practice. They locked up the most important defensive player on their roster on the most lucrative defensive tackle contract in NFL history. They eliminated the biggest potential distraction before it ever had a chance to breathe. And they set up a foundation, Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis locked up through at least 2029, that makes their defensive line one of the most formidable in football for years to come. At the same time, quietly, without a $100 million press release, a 6'9" rookie from Miami is walking into the Jefferson Health Training Complex and already making a veteran backup think hard about his roster spot. Markel Bell is real. His size is real. His college production is real. And the Eagles' willingness to give him first-team reps from day 1 of spring workouts tells you everything you need to know about how they view his upside. Training camp is where teams are built, where depth is established, where the separation between championship-caliber rosters and everybody else rosters gets made clear in the summer heat. For the Eagles, Camp 2026 starts with momentum, starts with clarity, starts with the biggest potential distraction resolved before it ever became one. Now comes the work. The pads go on. The contact begins. The battles get real. And somewhere on that practice field in South Philadelphia, Jalen Carter is going to line up and remind everyone why they just paid him $38 million a year. Somewhere on that field, Markel Bell is going to take another rep at right tackle and make Fred Johnson look over his shoulder. Somewhere on that field, Jalen Hurts is going to take a snap in the new Sean Mannion offense and look at what's around him, at Devonta Smith running free, at a healthy offensive line protecting him, at a defense that might be the best in football, and feel what every player in this league chases their entire career. He's going to feel like a champion waiting to happen. The question is whether the Eagles can go get it. Stick around, because this summer is going to tell us a lot, and we are going to cover every single piece of it. If you are new here, welcome. This is where the Eagles conversation never stops. Subscribe, hit that bell, and make sure you don't miss a single update from training camp because trust me, this story is just getting started. The Eagles just dropped a bombshell, and the shockwave hasn't even reached full force yet.